Thank you very much. Good morning, and thank you to Scape for inviting me this morning. I'm going to talk to you about the wonders of environmental reconstruction. I also have the purpose of indicating that much of what I talk about can actually be done by your people, not just archaeology, but environmental reconstruction. What I'm going to do is look at one particular project that I worked on a couple of years ago, and I want to show you how we got from this picture near Kilmartin Glen today, and imagine a photograph being taken from the same spot 4,400 years ago. Everything on this is pretty spatially precise. We know where everything was in this landscape. So I'm going to try to explain how we get to this kind of image here. And I'll introduce the project. What we were interested in was understanding rock art, and we wanted to understand where rock art was in relation to people. So we had various research questions to do with archaeology. Were the carvings hidden at the time? Were they tucked away inside a woodland? Or did many people visit them? Were they part of the daily round for people? How easy was it to get out as far as the rock art in the middle of the valley here? And then were the rocks even in the centre of the valley at that time, 4,500 years ago? So, let's start. The first thing you do is basically make a map. You walk around a lot, you use these things, these are aerial photographs. These can be purchased quite easily from the Royal Commission in Edinburgh. For £18 a year, you can basically look at every aerial photograph that the Royal Commission actually has. So it's easy. Well, what you see here is a valley floor, and you can see these little patterns. These are former river channels, and they're black because they're filled with peat at the moment. All of these are abandoned, and that's the river at the moment. It needs interpretation, this map, but it's quite easy to explain it. What we end up with is a map with different coloured surfaces called terraces on the valley floor, and here are our paleo channels. So where was the river 4,500 years ago? We dated every one of these things. And there we are. So we can watch the river moving around through time. And that is where the river was 4,500 years ago. Radiocarbon dating has to be done by experts, as Nicola Russell will tell us, but sampling is quite easy. And this is the river as it was 4,500 years ago. This shallow, this wide, cows easy to cross, and people also easy to get across to see the rock art itself. Then we can start to reconstruct what the vegetation was like and what the land use history was. Again, here is our site, a small black peat-filled channel. That's all it is at the present day. But you can extract extraordinary amounts of information. Here is our pollen site, within 100 metres or so of people carving the rock art. This is an expertise too. This is hard to teach. This is what it shows you, however. Over on the left-hand side we have depth, a very shallow peat, but one that grew over several thousand years. These are all radiocarbon dates, and here is our chronology. This is when things changed. And then every other curve is for a plant, mostly trees here like alder and birch and hazel and oak. Grasses which increase when you clear the woodland and allow grazing animals on. They grow barley, they grow wheat slightly earlier. They fancied growing wheat here and it changed to barley, not far off the time when our rock art was being created. So we can interpret what the vegetation looked like, and we can put the vegetation in particular localities. And here we have the valley floor, open, grass covered. Crops, we think, up on the top. The houses are invented. We didn't find those. Everything else we found. And here, still a slightly modified wild wood, 1600 years or so after agriculture. And the woodland looked like this, beautiful, sunny, Western Atlantic oak wood that you could move through. We can look at what the landscape did in response either to changing climate or to changing impacts of people. Here we have a diagram, again from the same sediment, and we are measuring, as Karen said, carbon content. How organic is this sediment? The more organic, the less the river is doing. We can measure the particle size. We do it on a machine that goes ping every so often, but before that we measured it through pipettes, and you can do this. What does it tell you? It tells you about the changing fluvial or river activity, the number of floods, the magnitude of these floods as they change through time. And that's connected to what people were doing in that landscape. So you're moving from people to landscape to hills. We can look at soil erosion too. Much the same diagram here. Again, a sediment fill, we can measure organic matter because that tells us how actively eroding the slope was. And here again, changes in particle size only, which simply show when the damage was being done to soils. And if the soils were being damaged, what happened to the human communities, the people that farmed this landscape? Was it even the people who farmed here that were making the soil erosion? It's these relationships that we work on. So, it can be a consequence of crop growing or climate. We need to date it, and we can here. So we have these slopes up here, eroding very seriously. At the time, farmers were making this rock art. They were making a major erosional impact in this landscape. Things we didn't do, but you might. We can look at wood identification, and we can count tree rings. There are very, very simple software packages for doing this now. We could, and you could, sieve out waterlogged plant macro remains and pick them out with paintbrushes or with tweezers, stack them up, identify them with help, and characterise the changing landscape. And maybe with help, you can do that for archaeological sites, which is Karen's speciality. Here are pollen grains. You probably can't do that. Here are diatoms, which tell you about the acidity of the soil. You probably can't do that. But much of this you can get to. Thank you very much.